ప్రియతమా నా హృదయమా నీ జ్ఞాపకం ఒక గాయమా ఆరాధనే అన్యాయమా అనురాగమే వీడని భారమా ప్రాణమే అరిచేతిలోన సేరదీసి నీకి లేఖ రాసానే హరివిల్లులోని 7 రంగులే కందీళ్ళలోన ఏకమయ్యాయే చిక్కని నీ చీకటి కురులలో నా దారి మరిచిపోయానే చల్లగా సాగే నీ చెలిమిలో నన్ను నేనే కోల్పోయానే మెరుపులా నీ నవ్వుతోటి వెలుగు దారి పరిచివేసావే ఆ దారిలోనే నన్ను నేను పొంది ఒక బాటసారిలా వెను తిరిగానే ప్రాణమే అరిచేతిలోన సేరదీసి నీకి పాట రాసానే హరివిల్లులోని 7 రంగులే నా లేఖలోన ఏకమయ్యాయే Thank you. వేగమైన బండి బ్యాక్ సీటులోన కాలమన్న వీధి నేను చుట్టన రంగులంటిన తెల్ల కాగితంపై జ్ఞాపకాల పాట నేను రాయన సందు దాటి ముందుకెళ్ళేలోపు నన్నే ముంచుకొచ్చిన వానమొప్పులా గొంతులో దాగి ఉన్న మాటలన్నీ చేసే మాయజాలం సాలం ఇంద్రజాలం నిన్నగా కమున్న ఇంటి పెరడులోన అమ్మ పెంచిన పూల తోటలా క్లాసు రూములో బ్యాక్ బెంచ్ మీద నేను గీసిన పోకిమోన్లా జాలం ఇంద్రజాలం కాలం చేసే మాయజాలం దూరం దూసుకెళ్ళే వేగం చేరుకున్న తీరం అంతులేని ఈ రంగస్థలాన విధి వింత నాటకంలో నేను భాగమా వేగమైన బండి బ్యాక్ సీటులోనా జ్ఞాపకాల ఇంద్రజాలమా. Thank you. Well, I'm done with the songs. Just give me a minute. I'll clean this up and come back.
Check. Cool. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart, all right, when I say this. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm serious. In all the imaginary TED Talks that I've ever given in my head, it was almost always significantly older, wiser, cooler, not to mention way more successful. I don't know what's up with the universe's algorithm or why it brought me here today. But what I do know is that it's an immense honor and a privilege, so thanks for having me. Since I don't know where to begin, it's only fair that I start from the beginning. Come from a family of artists and entertainers, very passionate ones at that, the kind who wear their hearts up their sleeve rather proudly. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not necessarily like them most of the time, but today I've decided to take a leaf from their book. I think most of my early childhood memories revolve around being backstage with my dad while he was managing some event or taking care of some grown-up stuff, or running some errands, or hanging out on film sets while I saw my parents on the live feedback monitor while they were doing their thing. But mostly I was just playing video games and collecting Pokemon cards, man. Like, that's what, anyway, that does not matter. I think I was about 5 when I acted for the first time in front of a camera. So needless to say, I'm pretty used to all of this. Being in front of a crowd never felt like a hassle to me. To add to this, I was introduced to doing stage plays in school, and I very quickly fell in love with the theater of it all and the community of people that it brought with it into my life. So much so that I took it with me into my adolescence. By the time I was 14, I was traveling around the country, acting in plays in various theater festivals around the country. Kolkata, Trivandrum, Delhi, everything from Shakespeare to Girish Khanna to Samuel Beckett. I've done it and I've made memories for a lifetime. Now, growing up in the late 2000s and the early 2010s, in order to be considered successful, you had to be an engineer. Like you had to take MPC, get into one of those junior colleges, take special IIT coaching, crack the exam, get into IIT. If you didn't crack the exam, don't worry, there are other engineering colleges. Graduate, get a job, work for experience, sneakily apply for a master's online. And then once you get in, put your papers. No. First apply for a loan, then put your papers, then leave home, go abroad, graduate again, get a job again, and earn in dollars, and then you'd be considered successful and you'd be somehow happy in life. Now, unfortunately for me, they lost me at math in MPC. But fortunately for me, my parents weren't big fans of this zeitgeist either. So I managed to go down that road, avoid going down that road. Now, since I had way more free time than the rest of my peers while they were busy with their things, I decided to pick up learning the guitar because I was always fascinated by it. What I didn't realize was that it would shape my identity well into my adult life and bring me here today in front of all of you guys and countless other people online and offline. I didn't realize. I was just 15. I picked up the guitar. I went to this music school in DD Colony that I still go to today, by the way. Now, when I picked the guitar up, I was very fascinated by it. Day after day, week after week, I was sitting with it for hours to the end. The deeper I dived, the further the bottom seemed into this rabbit hole. And I must admit, even today, even right now, as I stand here speaking to you guys, I have no clue where the bottom is. I'm just going down this rabbit hole. At that time, internet was my greatest resource. I was quickly realizing that YouTube was an essential tool. You could use it to learn things also, like not just watch anime. And it was fascinating. I was at it every day and I was learning so many new things. I marched on and on and on and on and on, and within a couple of months, I was playing Boulevard of Broken Dreams in my school assembly. And I went from being the class clown to one of the cool kids within the span of 3 minutes. That was a crowning achievement. Supposed to clap now. But okay. Needless to say, it didn't just stop with playing Green Day covers. I also learned other songs. And I also appeared for the Trinity grade exams. And before I knew it, I've been at it for 2 years. Now at this point, I decided to step out of my bedroom because I was actively dreaming about getting on stage with a band, my band. So I did what was the most accessible, easy thing to do at that point. I put out a word online. So I'd like to just stop here and give you some context. This was still relatively in the nascent stages of social media. Orkut was dying. Remember Orkut? Orkut was dying, and everybody was slowly getting onto Facebook, and Instagram was non-existent. It was not a thing. So I reached out to people who knew people, and that's how I ended up meeting my first bunch of bandmates. We bonded over our love for classic rock, and we learned a lot of Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin covers. This was for life. So we jammed for hours and hours and hours and hours, and when we were finally ready, we decided to head to open mics, battle of bands, and college gigs, and that's how we got our first breaks. People started to notice us, and slowly but steadily started reaching out to us and asking us to come perform at their venues and their indie gigs. It was around this point that we played our first show for this organization called Tree Huggers Club, who are still very famous today were promoting local indie bands and giving them a break. It was these guys who asked me that one quintessential question that pushed me deeper into the rabbit hole. You know what the question was? Question was, you guys write your own music, man? That was it. It was the one question that changed everything for me. Before I knew it, I was writing songs for my band. I was first writing the guitar parts, then I was writing the lyrics. Then I would sit with my band later to arrange the entire thing. Looking back at it, it feels surreal. I was sitting by myself alone, all right, at our regular hangout spot in DD Colony, and I was writing lyrics for hours to the end. And I still remember this feeling that I wanted to perfectly translate the music, the sound in my head, as accurately as possible into the chords on my guitar. It was like an itch at the back of my mind that I couldn't scratch. Like I wanted to get that sound right, and I wanted it to sound different from what I heard on the radio. I wanted it to sound like me. So, yeah, I guess the first time we got on stage and played our original compositions with our usual repertoire of covers was one of the most empowering moments of my life. Now, at this point, we were all at the tail end of our college experiences, and the rest of my bandmates and I started branching out and doing different things. As they moved towards different aspects in life, a little further away from music, I was actively heading deep into the rabbit hole again. I wanted to make more music. Music was my life. So I decided to take an off year after college and figure out where all of this was going. I wanted some direction. I didn't know what was going to happen because clearly I wanted to do this, but I didn't know how to approach this. So I took a break here. And somehow, in the year of 2016, in the month of October, I ended up living in Goa, Arambol, for 1 month. I was playing music in the shack. And that was when it hit me that I wanted to do this full time. I wanted to be a full-time musician. So as soon as I got back home to Hyderabad, I started looking out for other people to form a band. But this time, I started looking for people who were deeper into the rabbit hole, just like me. And I found these people. And we started writing newer songs with newer sounds in an aggressively different direction from what I was used to doing. And I'll have you know that I still perform with these guys till today. We opened for bands like the Raghu Dikshit Project, As We Keep Searching, Whence I Met Toast, Guitar Prasanna, and a bunch of other cool guys who are personal heroes to me. Now, as I was performing and as I was practicing with these other people who had their own perspectives, my sensibilities in music and my taste in music evolved. And I started finding solace in more technical genres like progressive rock, progressive metal, jazz, folk music, and funk. And these genres really started having an impact on the kind of music I wrote and my sonic aesthetic. And so I was figuring out my sound, and it was quite interesting. And this desire to record and release my music formed in me. So we focused on actively writing original compositions for my debut solo EP titled Not Worth It. And we reached out to the Sounds Within, a music boutique that specialized in producing music for independent musicians to make my dream a reality. It's worth noting that this was an all-English EP with 4 songs. And we took about, say, a couple of months to write all the songs. Now, all of this seems like a walk in the park, right? Nice flowers are there, you're walking, smells good, birds are chirping. This was when I hit my first roadblock. Now, if things went according to the plan, I suspect that I wouldn't have been here anyway. But I digress, because a day before we were supposed to head to the studio to record the first single in the EP, I got a text message from the drummer of the band saying that he wanted to quit the band for personal reasons. Dun, 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 dun. So this is where, no, I'd like to say that I don't want to get into those reasons right now because they're pretty insignificant at this point of time and space. But I'd like to emphasize and bring your notice to the fact that I was back to the scratch. To top it off, the guy who quit the band was the only one with any real recording experience, and he was supposed to supervise the whole thing. Now, at this point, I had two options. Option number one is the sensible thing to do. Don't go to the studio. Stop this thing. Figure out what your next move is. Option number two was, how does it matter anyway? Just go to the studio and figure it out. Guess what I did? Yeah, I walked into this fancy studio in Sainikpuri, full of high-tech equipment and gear, stuff that I've never seen before in my life, riddled with anxiety, fear, imposter syndrome, self-doubt, you name it. And I made it happen. Within the course of the next couple of months, I recorded my first EP with some guidance from my producer who was based out of Bangalore at that point. But I made it happen. And I'd like to bring it to your notice that making music is not just like recording in a studio. It's a recording in a studio, producing it properly, mixing it, mastering it, getting the artwork design, distributing it, and then marketing it. Made all of it happen. And in the process, I learned so much. We even had like a release launch gig at that time. 300 people showed up to that gig. It was one of the best days of my life. However, it's worth noting that with these 4 songs, English songs that I had in the EP, during this recording process, I had this weird urge inside me to write a song in Telugu, which is my mother tongue from here. Now, I never wrote in Telugu before, but it just poured out of me. And I wrote a song, my first Telugu song, Kalachidre. It's a part of my first EP, Not Worth It. And my mom helped me perfect the lyrics. Anyway, after the EP launch, I decided it was time to get back to my education. So after hunting for colleges for a little bit, I got into Xavier Institute of Communications in Mumbai. So I moved to Bombay. And for 10 months while I was studying advertising there, I made memories for a lifetime. I had so much fun. I made so many friends. And something was missing. Still feeling off. All of it was just like, what am I doing here? I could be home playing my guitar. I could be home making music. What's happening now? Why am I here? Do I have to work in an agency? I'm a writer, not a copywriter. What's happening? This is when it dawned on me that I'm meant to be doing music full time and I could not afford any distractions. So I decided to move back home. On one of my final days in Mumbai, I was sitting on the kitchen counter in my tiny one-room studio apartment in South Bombay. Don't ask me about the rent, please. I was sitting on the kitchen counter with my guitar, and it just dawned on me that I spent close to an year in this massive city, much bigger than my home, where nobody understood my language. I was overwhelmed by this feeling. And I wrote a bunch of lines in Telugu, which would later become the opening lines of Lekha, the title track of my 9-track Telugu album that I worked on almost immediately as soon as I got back home. My mom and my sister, both of them helped me out with writing and perfecting the lyrics. I'm always grateful for that. You know what's even more fascinating is, I worked with the same drummer who quit the band a day before the recording of my first EP. And guess what? This time, he didn't just play drums. He recorded it, he produced the entire thing, he mixed it, and mastered it. That's how we worked on Lekha. We put it out. Now, it's worth noting that at the time when we put out the album, there was only like so much wiggle room for Telugu indie music. If you're making indie music, it either meant you made indie music in English or in Hindi. If you wanted to make Telugu music, then you had to make commercial film music, or you had to make one of those like easy listening pop, rap, or folk songs for YouTube music labels, because that's where the money was. There were some beautiful alternate Telugu indie tracks, but all of them were almost made for like short films or other indie films. Music, Telugu music in general, was so symbiotic in its nature to film music that it was very rare for it to exist outside the confines of the structure of the film business. This is why Lekha was different. Because this was a Telugu indie album that broke every rule in the book. We found a way, I don't know how we did it, but we found a way to seamlessly merge pop with rock, jazz, folk, funk, gent, Carnatic classical, metal, world music, most importantly, spoken word poetry. All of these elements are there in the album while maintaining a narrative lyrically and sonically. One of the most memorable moments of my life was when we got my dad to come to the recording studio and we asked him to recite revolutionary poetry by Sri Sri from his greatest work of all time, arguably, called Mahaprasthanam, for one of the instrumental tracks in the album called Prasthanam. Now, as soon as we put the album out, almost immediately, people who were looking for something different noticed it. The songs were very well received and they got good publicity and they were published very frequently by a lot of big publications around the country. The music from the album is still featured on a lot of playlists, even today. And this was in 2019. Looking back on it right now, almost 4 years later, it feels surreal because working on this album just opened doors for me. Post Leka, I focused on learning music production by myself. And it helped me enable other Telugu independent artists make more Telugu indie music. I ended up working for a multitude of projects, including film scores, ad films, film songs, other Telugu independent songs, worked with so many other bands as a session player. I ended up working with many great Tollywood composers from whom I learned a lot from. Throughout the pandemic, I was busy recording guitars and producing music for other independent artists. And these guys were not just like a single template of artists, all right? They were different people. Like, there were people who were making metal, there were people who were making rap, there were people who were making folk. And through these collaborations, I learned that one of the biggest aspects of being a 21st century musician was unity in diversity. If you understood this, then you could, the key is to be an interdisciplinary artist, guys. That's how it works. And now I'm happy to admit that after all these years, I'm still trying to find my sound. So now, I'm back to the beginning. I'm back to where I started off with you guys today. I don't know what I'm doing here. But maybe that's a good thing. Because I was only ever sure of one thing. No matter how deep into the rabbit hole you went, no matter how lost you were, as long as you loved doing whatever that got you there in the first place, it's going to be all right. Because walls will turn into doors, doubters will turn into followers, and haters will turn into lovers if you follow your bliss. Thanks for having me. My name is Niteesh.